Dear viewers, welcome to the channel Bharat's Pharmacy. So in this video, I'm going to explain about the infusion, decoction and maceration method. So already we discussed in the part 1 video about the introduction about uh, Galenicals and what are the various uh, types of extraction process and terms and definitions. And in this video, I'm going to explain about the infusion and its preparation, and decoction and its preparation method, and the maceration process and types of maceration. So what do you mean by infusion? So it consists of pouring water over the drugs. It may be the raw material and then allowing it to keep in contact with water, or it may be any other menstruum for the stated period. Usually it will be 15 minutes with occasional stirring. And finally, based on the raw material, if filtering is required, so you can go for filtering it. And in certain cases, the market may be pressed, and some cases in infusion, market should not be pressed. The boiling water is most commonly used as a solvent, and it having a greater solvent action than cold water. Earlier days, during Gallon's period, the equipment was used coffee pot and or teapot, and due to some drawbacks, the coffee pot and teapot is replaced with a specialized infusion part. The later part of this video, I'll show you what is the specialized infusion part and how it is designed. And there are two types of infusion Galen was mentioned. One it is fresh infusion and the concentrated infusion. But in today's scenario, so we prepare only concentrated infusion, and later from the concentrated infusion, the fresh infusion is diluted and prepared. So coffee pot is the simplest form of apparatus which is used for the preparation of infusion. In this method, the raw material is placed at the bottom of the pot. Then the solvent, it may be water, cold water or hot water, or the selective solvent, whatever it is. So you can pour and you can wait for the stated period of time. And during this period, occasional stirring is required so that the saturated layer is disturbed and the fresh menstruum is contact with the solvent, and so that we will get a perfect extraction. And this infusion, it can also be prepared by closing the drug in a muslin bag, and then this bag is just suspending just below the level of water, not completely immersed into the bottom of the pot, just below the level of a solvent when you keep it, and you can make an efficient extraction. So in this methodology, the stirring is not required. And why stirring is not required in this case? Because the water slowly circulates due to increase in the specific gravity, right? So during the exoosmosis and endoosmosis, the menstruum it enters into the drug, and the menstruum it becomes solution. That solution is coming out. And when you compare with solvent and solution, the solution density is more. So automatically what will happen, the solution it goes down and the fresh menstruum it comes up. So we just suspend the muslin bag just below the level of water, not completely immersed into the bottom of the pot. So what will happen? The solution it goes down, and the fresh menstruum it's coming up, so that the extraction is efficient even without stirring. And the additional advantage here, if the water is hot water, if you are using, and in the surface of the hot water, it will become very cool, and compared to the bottom layer of water. So the cold water density, it is more and the hot water density is very less. This also it enhances the efficiency of extraction by circulating the hot water it coming up and the cold water it's going down. So this is what in the muslin bag method, we don't require any stirring, but we can make an efficient extraction. So the heavier layer when it comes down, okay, their place is taken by the fresh menstruum. So as a result, there is a slow circulation of menstruum, and hence stirring is not required in the muslin bag method. And in this case, when hot water is used as a menstruum, a cooling of water occurs more rapidly at the surface than in the mass of the liquid. The lower layers of water, which are hotter and contains less dissolved active constituents, so that will rise and displace the upper layer. So this is also helping us to enhance efficient extraction even without stirring. Hence, there is a slow circulation of the water, which makes stirring unnecessary in the case of the muslin bag method. Nowadays, we prepared the specialized infusion part, which is also known as the infusion part, and are used for the preparation of infusion. It consists of a loose, a perforated shelf resting on a projection near the top of the pot. So the drug is placed on the perforated shelf, and the pot is filled with the menstruum, and the perforated shelf is adjusted below the surface of water. So only differences in compared to muslin bag, we are using a perforated plate so that it gives the maximum occupation of the maximum occupancy in the pot, so that we can use more amount of raw material and we can do efficient extraction. So more than the theoretical explanation, so with this image, I just explain you in detail. So here, if you see the raw material we were taken and then we are putting into the bottom of the uh, apparatus. Maybe assume it's a coffee pot or tea pot. So in this, when you pour a menstruum, so whatever it may be depends on the raw material, the menstruum it may be different. So whenever the menstruum it enters into the raw material, so within the cell, it takes that is called exoosmosis. Sorry, it's called endoosmosis. When the drug it enters into the raw material, so within the drug it becomes solution, and because of the differences in the menstruum and the solution, so what is happening, the exoosmosis takes place, and then the fresh menstruum it goes inside, and then the solution takes place. But in this part, if you see, the solution is always present only at the bottom of the container, it never comes up. So that's what, when you use a normal pot, you require continuous stirring. So only then continuous or occasional stirring that makes an efficient extraction, because we have to make the fresh layer or the fresh menstruum what it is present at the top, that it has to goes down, and the solution we are making into a diluted, so that the bottom layer is the saturated layer we are displacing with the fresh menstruum. So to avoid this occasional stirring, so the infusion part, what is called as the muslin bag material. So here what we do is we take raw material and then we are just placing into the muslin bag. So this muslin bag, instead of immersing completely in the bottom of the pot, so we are just keeping in the just below the level of menstruum. So the same process of endoosmosis, and within the endoosmosis, the solution takes place within the cell, and the solution is coming down. So by the time the solution is coming down, the fresh menstruum, what it is present in the bottom, it is less denser, whereas the solution is more denser. So what happens is the solution is without stirring, automatically the solution goes down, and the fresh menstruum is coming up. And in this case, the menstruum, if it is hot water, so the surface layer it become very cold, and it is generally the cold water density it is more and the hot water density is less. So that also it forces the cold water it goes down, and the fresh menstruum it's are the hot water it's coming up, so that the extraction is efficient. So to occupy the maximum space, and this muslin bag method it is replaced with the infusion part. So where instead of muslin bag, there will be a perforated plate, and throughout the plate you can keep your raw material, and without stirring we are able to extract all the all the active constituent what it is present in the infusion. So this is what the methodology of the infusion preparation. And these infusions are divided into two types. One, it is a fresh infusion and the concentrated infusion. So what do you mean by a fresh infusion? Infusion is prepared, and if you used within 24 hours of preparation, that's called as fresh infusion. And generally, when you talk about fresh infusion, today we are preparing from the concentrated infusion instead of preparing fresh infusions every time. So we prepared and stored with concentrated infusion, and we will be diluting it with one part of concentrated infusion and 7 volumes of menstruum. So for example, a quassia infusion. So this can be prepared by the quassia raspings. You take the quassia raspings and then pour it with the menstruum, and wait for a stated period, usually 15 minutes. And it should be used within 12 hours of preparation, because the microbial attack is very common problem with the fresh infusion. And if you store it at a lesser temperature, maybe the storage period can be increased a little. And this preparations, okay, so fresh infusion, so since it doesn't contain any preservatives, the microbial attack is the common problem in a fresh infusion. And the concentrated infusion, okay, so the normal infusion make it into a concentrated form by using two different method. So one is double maceration method, or it may be triple maceration method. The concentrated infusions are 8 times stronger, as I told you in the previous slide. So we are diluting with 7 parts of menstruum. So it is generally 8 times stronger than the fresh infusion. And alcohol in the concentration of 20 to 25% is used as a menstruum. Hence, these preparations can be stored for a longer period. So since alcohol is a menstruum, it doesn't allow the microbial growth. And the dilution of 1 volume of concentrated infusion with 7 volumes of a menstruum, it resembles corresponding fresh infusion in potency. So why we don't prepare a fresh infusion? So we can't prepare the exact expected volume. So when you require 10 ml, we required minimum to prepare 15 ml. So after using the 10 ml, that 5 ml is getting wasted. In emergency condition, preparing fresh infusion, it's very difficult. So that's what at that time they prepared in concentrated form, and whenever it is required in emergency condition or due to storage period, long storage period, and whatever it is required, and only that much we can take and we can dilute it. So there was no wastage when you prepare fresh infusion from the concentrated infusion. But if you made methodology only for making fresh infusion, there will be a wastage, and as well as you cannot store it for a longer period, and managing situation in the emergency situation, it was very difficult. And that's what that time the fresh infusion is replaced with the concentrated infusion. So whenever it is required, you can dilute it with the appropriate volume of menstruum, and you can make the preparation. So there are few examples of the concentrated infusion. So maybe concentrated infusion of orange BPC, British Pharmaceutical Codex, and clove BPC, and gentian BP, British Pharmacopoeia. So gentian infusion here, just take the thinly sliced gentian and menstruum of 25% of alcohol, and pour menstruum and wait for a period of 48 hours, and then press the mark. And again, you pour some amount of menstruum and make it for a 24-hour period, and allow to stand for 14 days. And if you find any precipitate, go for filtration and make the preparation. And since it's containing alcohol as a menstruum, so no microbial attack, and so that you can store it for longer duration. So whenever is required, even a fresh infusion, you can dilute in this. I just take one part of this menstruum and one part of your active constituent, and with 7 parts of menstruum. So you can prepare your fresh infusion without any wastage. You can give it to the patient. So consider infusion made by triple maceration. So both about double and triple maceration, I'll be explaining in the later part of this video. So, and one example is the quassia infusion. So the quassia raspings. Okay, so that you can take, and here water is the menstruum. So in triple maceration, the name itself it indicates. So we are doing maceration for three times. And why we should do 3 times, and what is the advantage with in comparison with the double maceration or triple maceration? I'll explain you in the later part of this video. But just a triple maceration, the name implies you have to do maceration 3 times. So in this case, so what we do is we take raw material, we pour menstruum for a 1 hour period, and after a period, so we extract or we separate the active constituent. And again, you are pouring menstruum, part of the menstruum. We'll be waiting for a period of other 24 hours or 12 hours. And again, a third time, again, we are taking the menstruum and we are pouring into the raw material, and we are waiting for a period. And the second and third portion of menstruum alone, I mean, what is the extract we collected? So that alone we are collecting, and then we are combining the second and third portion, and then we are evaporating to a specified extent. So automatically, when the menstruum is evaporated, the preparation is become a little concentrated. So here, what is the logic behind why we are taking only the second and third portion of the preparation? So why we are not disturbing the first portion of the menstruum? So generally, the first part of extract always it is containing the maximum amount of active constituent, and most of the active constituent of a plant-based material, it is of thermolabile in nature. So when you are evaporating the solvent, so mostly we are applying heat. So when you start evaporate the whole portion and you apply heat, some of the active constituent it may get affected. That may be the first reason. And the second reason is the total volume when you evaporate and then you want to reduce, or when you want to make it into concentrated, so it will take more time. So that's what we do is the first portion of the menstruum or first portion of the extract, so which is containing the maximum amount of active constituent. So assume you have 500 ml. So we are kept as a first 200 ml we are collect and then we prepared as a first portion. So remaining 300 ml we are dividing into second and third portion. So if you collect the whole extract as a 500 ml and then you are applying into heat and then you are reducing the volume of a menstruum. So assume you are making a 300 ml by evaporating 200 ml. So you have to apply heat for the whole 500 ml and the process it will takes more time. But in this case of a triple maceration, so what we do is the first portion, the first 200 ml we prepared and then we kept it as a separate, we reserved it. And only the second and third portion of the menstruum, we just collect it in a beaker and we are evaporating. So evaporating this 300 ml into 200 ml, you don't require much time. And also a very important concept here, the active constituent is not exposed into heat, so that the active constituent efficiency, so we are retaining. So in concentrated infusion, so whenever you do labeling, so the important thing is how much percentage of alcohol and the storage condition. So how long this preparation can be used and the category of this preparation. So quasi infusion, it is used for expel the thread worms. And what are the advantages of the concentrated infusion? So very convenient. So whenever is required, you can prepare fresh infusion just by diluting with from the concentrated infusion. And stability. And there is no wastage when you prepare a concentrated infusion in comparison with directly preparing a fresh infusion. Concentrated infusion also having some disadvantages. So here the lack of aroma. So this aroma matter, first a few days of a preparation or few weeks of preparation, the aroma matter you can feel. But after a few weeks or a few months, the aroma matter, every time when you open up the container or the volatile matter, it will be easily evaporating it. So since in this concentrated infusion, we are using alcohol, the expenses are the compared to fresh infusion, the cost is quite high. And this concentrated infusion today we prepared in terms of tinctures and infusion by using alcohol and water alone. It won't give a complete or a efficient extraction. So that's what we are using water. Additionally, alcohol also as a menstruum. And in this preparation, preservative action is required and additional preservatives also you can add. And many active constituents are soluble in alcohol from the plant-based material. So that's what alcohol is a universal solvent for extracting most of the plant-based active constituent. And when you go for extraction with the gum and albuminous matter, there is a possibility you can find some precipitate. So in that case, you have to go for a filtration. So the second process of maceration, Galeniclas is decoction. So almost the same process as per the procedure. So the here the drug material, it is hard and woody nature and having a thermostable water soluble constituents. But your storage period or your to the during process is only 10 minutes. So in this decoction process, the drug is boiled with water for a stated period, usually at 10 minutes. So that is the only difference between infusion and decoction. That is in case if it is infusion, it's 15 minutes and in decoction, it's only at 10 minutes. After boiling, the liquid is strained and the water is passed through the content of the strainer to make the required volume. This process is mainly used for vegetable drugs, hard and woody nature, having thermostable, water-soluble constituents. So the apparatus is used in the infusion preparation. The same apparatus you can use it here. The nature of raw material and the time duration. Only these two are the differences between infusion and decoction process. Now we'll move on to the next part of extraction as maceration. So in the first part of the video, already I defined what you mean by maceration. Maceration is nothing but it just make moist condition. So this maceration process is divided into three types. The first one is a process for tinctures, which is made from organized drug. What do you mean by organized drug? A well-defined cell structure, for example, roots, stems, and leaves. So these are all the organized drugs, and this can be prepared by a simple maceration process. And the second type is a process for tincture made from unorganized drug, where we don't have well-defined cell structure like resins and gums. And here the preparation, we can do it, the final adjustment of volume we have to do. So that is why the unorganized drug process is called as maceration process with adjustment. And third method is a process for concentrated preparation, which includes double maceration and triple maceration. So during concentrated infusion preparation, we discussed there are two methods. One it is double maceration and triple maceration. So the process of double maceration and triple maceration, I'll explain you in this part. So the organized drug is nothing but a well-defined cell structure. This is to make you to understand. And the unorganized drug is nothing but as gums and resins where you don't have any well-defined cell structure. So instead of explaining individually about the organized drug and unorganized drug, in comparison, we'll be explaining, it will be easy to you to understand. So organized drug, when you take, so whatever the volume of menstruum, the whole volume of menstruum, you just pour it on the beaker. For doing maceration process, we don't require any specialized apparatus. Just a normal beaker, that's very much is enough to do, it is enough to perform maceration process. You take a beaker and then you pour, add raw material which you wanted to extract, and then you pour the menstruum. Menstruum is nothing but it's a solvent. And usually the stated period for organized drug, it is 2 to 7 days of time. And after 7 days period, what you can do is go for filtration and you collect the liquid, what you say, it's strained liquid. And in organized drug, the one important thing what you have to do is you should press the mark, because organized drug, it retains the maximum volume of menstruum within its spaces. So that's what when you start pressing the mark only, you can collect the amount of or maximum amount of menstruum. And in organized drug, the final volume, you should not adjust it. And examples are the tincture of orange and tincture of lemon. So in the unorganized drug, so what it is called is modified maceration or maceration process with adjustment. So in unorganized drug, so we never use the whole volume of menstruum. So we just add the raw material and then 4 by 5th volume of menstruum. And here the process compared to organized drug, the process of extraction is a bit easy. So even sometimes in 2 days also you can complete it. And in this process, you can go for filtration or just decantation, just to tilt the container so that without disturbing the sediment, you can collect your extract alone, or else you can go for a filtration. And in this process, the difference compared to organized drug, the mark, it should not be pressed. Since the unorganized drug doesn't contain a well-defined cell structure, it won't retain the menstruum or the solution within its spaces. So the menstruum, it passes and then it takes up the active constant, it comes out immediately. So that's what here mark pressing is not required. Simply when you go for filtration or decantation, the whole volume or the maximum volume of solution or the extract you can obtain. So that is what in unorganized drug, the mark is not necessary to be pressed. Even if you press, what is happening, the resins and gums, it starts coming out from the filter and it affects our final preparation. So that's what without pressing the mark. So you can get the total volume or whatever the maximum amount of extract we can obtain from the resin based or gum based or from the unorganized drug. And in this case, the final volume, it can be adjusted. So maybe the explanation on this point. So why final volume should be adjusted in the case of unorganized drug, and why final volume should not be adjusted in the organized drug. Maybe I'll explain you with some images. An example for the unorganized drug is tincture of myrrh and tincture of tolu. So when you take the organized drug and unorganized drug, here if you see the organized drug, it takes up the menstruum and it will be bulged, and most of the menstruum or the solution within the space, it will be retained, and that's what it is getting bulged. Whereas in unorganized drug, it won't retain any of the menstruum. It just menstruum, it passes and then it takes up the active constituent, and then immediately the solvent or the menstruum what you poured, that has become solution. So that's what in this case the pressing of mark is not required. So even without pressing, just if you pour and the extract maximum amount of extract, we can get it. So here volume retained by the drug. Okay, you take 1 gram of T-test or some raw plant-based material, you pour 10 ml of ethanol or alcohol, water or any other menstruum. After a period of extraction process, you cannot get it back the whole 10 ml. So definitely few ml it will be retained by the drug, and that is nothing but it is the volume retained by the drug. So the volume retained by the drug, in case it's organized drug, it is more. Assume you pour 10 ml, and after a period of maceration process, if you go for filtration, hardly you will get 2 ml or 3 ml. Only by pressing the mark, you will be getting up to 7 ml or 8 ml. So that is what pressing the mark is required in case of organized drug. Whereas in unorganized drug, since it doesn't contain well-defined cell structure, so the whole volume of extract, you can get it without any additional aid like pressing the mark or hydraulic press is not required. So that is the major difference between the organized drug and unorganized drug. And why the volume it should be adjusted or the why volume it should not be adjusted. So in case of unorganized drug, so whoever the person is doing or whatever the process you adopted, if you pour 10 ml or if you pour 100 ml of menstruum and after a period of the maceration process, you'll be getting back of the same volume. Either by 50 ml on the first day or in the next batch of the process also, we'll be getting the same volume of preparation with the same concentration. So there is no concentration difference between the batches. So that is what the final volume we can adjust it into rounded volume. Whereas in the case of organized drug, so every day when you follow a process, maybe at the first batch of the process, when you go for filtration, so the extraction, so we are getting a strained liquid, and by the time when you press the mark, so assume I have three individuals when we do. So one individual will be getting a, so I'm taking 100 ml of menstruum, and after the process of extraction, the first person when they are pressing the mark, so they are getting a around 80 ml. The second person they are getting around 90 ml, and the third person they are getting around 100 ml, 95 ml. So when you make the final volume, if you make it into rounded fraction or 100 ml, so what will happen for the first person who is getting around 80 ml, when you make it into 100 ml, you have to add 20 ml of menstruum. When you add 20 ml of fresh menstruum, what is happening? The concentration of the solution, it is getting affected because you required more volume of menstruum. Whereas the second person who is getting 90 ml, when you pour menstruum, so here what you required only 10 ml of menstruum. So what is happening here? The concentration is affected little. Whereas the third person who is getting 95 ml of extract by pressing the mark, and when you pour, you required only 5 ml. So you could see a huge differences in the concentration when the three individual when they are doing the same extraction process. The way they are using pressing the mark, maybe the manual maybe manual press, or maybe when you are using hydraulic press, the difference is in the liquid which we are obtaining or the solution which we are obtaining at the period of during the extraction. It varies in the organized drug by person to person or the methodology which we are adopting. Whereas in case of unorganized drug, so we are not following any procedure. If you pour 100 ml, batch 1 or batch 2 or batch 3 or all the 3%, they will be getting, assume they are getting 90 ml. So person 1 also will get 90 ml, person 2 also will get 90 ml, and person 3 also will get 90 ml. So what will happen? So you require to add only 10 ml of menstruum. So the concentration difference we could not find in case of in unorganized drug. Whereas in organized drug, so each individual, the methodology what we are adapting, so the pressing up at the time when you press the mark, so we'll be getting differences in the volume. So that is what without affecting the concentration of this preparation, so we are not adjusting the final volume in case of organized drug. So the person one who is getting 80 ml, so in that preparation, assume the concentration is 10 milligram, and the person two who is getting 90 ml, in that also definitely the concentration it will be 10 milligram. Only the volume will be the different. And the person three and who is getting 95 ml, in that a 10 milligram concentration definitely it will be there. But when you adjust with the menstruum, the final concentration it will vary, and that is what the final volume should not be adjusted in the case of organized drug, and the final volume can be adjusted with the remaining volume of menstruum in the unorganized drug. So this is a simple example why the volume adjustment it was not making the changes in the case of unorganized drug. because whatever the menstruum you pour, whoever is doing the process, we will be getting the same volume of extract. So the final volume of adjustment, we required the same quantity of menstruum. So that's the reason in a unorganized drug, the final volume can be adjusted, and in organized drug, final volume should not be adjusted. So now the preparation, I wanted to make it into a concentrated preparation, either by simple maceration process for organized drug or unorganized drug. The preparation is not much concentrated. So that's what I wanted to make the preparation into more concentrated. So during Gallen's process period, so you made a process called double maceration process. As the name it indicates, you are doing the process for 2 times, and that is why it is called as double maceration process. In this process, the raw material is macerated twice by using the menstruum, so which is divided into 2 parts. Maybe the specific formula is there, and according to the formula, you calculate the total volume of menstruum which is required for your first maceration, and use that volume of menstruum for first time, and then second portion of the menstruum you take, and then do it the second time. So the quantity of the menstruum is required for the first two macerations. It can be calculated as like, so the total volume of menstruum minus volume retained by the drug divided by 2. So here, what is volume retained by the drug? So as I already told you, you take a 10 gram of drug and you pour 50 ml of a menstruum. And after a period, you go for a filtration, you will not get the same 50 ml, you'll be getting around 40 ml. So the 10 ml, it will be retained by the drug, and that is nothing but it is the volume retained by the drug. For every drug, before you start your maceration process, you have to calculate your volume retained by the drug so that you can make your final volume into the rounded fraction. So for doing double maceration processes, we are applying in the formula a total volume of menstruum minus volume retained by the drug divided by 2 plus volume retained by the drug. So when you apply in this formula, we'll be getting some amount of menstruum. That menstruum we are using it for the first time maceration. And for the second time maceration, the formula is the total volume of menstruum minus volume of menstruum used in the first maceration. When you subtract this, and what is the volume we are getting, and the same volume that you can use it for your second maceration. So what is the concept behind this? So assume we have 1000 ml that we are dividing into 500 ml and 500 ml. So in this process, how we are making the process into concentrated in sense. So the statement as what is given by the gallon, it is the fresh menstruum which is having more extraction efficiency than, so if you take the all 1000 ml all at once, if you pour, and that menstruum it is not as a fresh menstruum, so the extraction efficiency a bit less, or it may be low. So that is what when he divides the solvent or divides the menstruum into the same 1000 ml, first he is pour 500 ml and he is waiting for some time, and after a period of 24 hours he is collecting the first 500 ml and he is keeping as a first portion. And the second 500 ml when you pour, here comparatively the extraction is bit efficient because the fresh menstruum which is having more extraction efficiency. So that is what his statement, and that, and he made the process of the simple maceration into double maceration process. And the maximum extraction is obtained in the multiple stage extraction. Here in the first step, the volume of menstruum retained by each gram of the drug, it should be determined by experimentally. So before you start your process, you have to calculate what is the volume retained by the drug. And the double maceration, the volume of menstruum retained by the first maceration, you have to calculate and you have to apply. So here I'll explain you with an example. So I have a 200 gram of drug and the menstruum is 1100 volume, and volume retained by the drug it is 100 ml. So for the first time maceration, as per the formula, so 1100 minus 100 divided by 2, so 500 plus volume retained by the drug it is 100. So for my first time maceration, I have to take 600 ml of menstruum. So after 24-hour period, so here what I should do is I would go for filtration. So since the raw material it will be retained 100 ml of the menstruum, so I'll be getting only 500 ml. So the total volume of menstruum what I have taken it is 600 ml, and I'll be getting a 500 ml of extract. So assume the solubility ratio of the active constituent, whatever the active constituent we expected, if it is having 100% solubility in the given solvent system. So when I take 500 divided by 600, I can extract 83.3 percentage during my first extraction, that is during first maceration. So now when I go for the second maceration, so what is in the second maceration formula? So the total volume of menstruum minus volume of menstruum used in the first maceration. My total volume is 1100 ml and the volume used in the first maceration is 600 ml. So here that what is the second volume what I am going to pour is the 500 ml. So I am pouring 500 ml of the menstruum, but already the drug it is retained 100 ml. So here the total volume of menstruum what it is present in the vessel it is 600 ml. So after a period of 24 hours or 12 hours, so I'm going for collecting the liquid. So by the time I can get back 500 ml, because 100 ml it will be retained by the drug. Here you have to be a bit careful. What is this 600 ml? I am pouring only 500 ml, but the 100 ml of the menstruum which is retained by the drug during first maceration is 100 ml. So that is what 500 plus 100, that this 600 ml. And the volume of water after a period of maceration of 12 hours or 24 hours, I'll be getting back into 500 ml. So already I extracted around 83.7% in the first maceration. Now the remaining volume of active constant, the water is present is only 16.7. So 500 divided by 600 into 16.7. So I can extract around 13.9 percentage of active constituent during my second maceration. Now you calculate or put together the 83.3 plus 13.9 percentage. So here I am able to extract around 97.2 percentage of the active constituent. Whereas the same process in single maceration. So my total volume of menstruum is 1100 ml. I am taking 1100 ml and after a period of 24 hours or 48 hours or 7 days period, I am going for collecting the mass rate. So where I am assuming the 100% of active constant solubility, I will be getting back the active constant or the menstruum. The extract is 1000 ml. So 1000 divided by 1100. So I can extract the active constant only 90.9 percentage. Whereas when I do the same process, when I go into double maceration process, I am able to extract around 97.2 percentage. So 97.2 minus 90.9 percentage, almost a 6.93 percentage, around 7 percentage of the active constituent I am extracting more in the double maceration process. Here the statement of the Galen is the fresh menstruum which is having more extraction efficiency. So with the assumption of whatever the solubility ratio, it may be 100% or it may be 90% or whatever it is, you apply in this formula. So here I took the solubility matter as 100%. So that is what I am able to explain you easily with your fractions. But 100% solubility, we cannot get it from raw material definitely. So whatever the ratio, when you go for a double maceration process, definitely the volume of extract or volume of active constituent is present in the extract, definitely it will be more. So the same process you can apply it for a triple maceration process. So the as the name it implies, 3 times we are going to do a maceration. So what is the formula we are using it for triple maceration process? So a total volume of for first time maceration, the total volume of menstruum minus volume retained by the drug divided by 3 plus volume retained by the drug. So only difference in the double maceration, first time we divided by 2, but here we are divided into 3. And for a second and third time maceration, the formula is the total volume of menstruum minus volume of menstruum used in the first time maceration divided by 2. When you take, we will be getting the equal quantity. That same equal quantity, we are going to pour it in the both second time as well as in the third time maceration. So here, one important thing what you should remember is the drug will be retained some amount of menstruum during the first time maceration. That amount of drug, that amount of menstruum what it is retained by the drug, that you have to apply in the second and third time maceration. So finally if you calculate, so around the 98% of extraction that we can do it in the help of triple maceration process, where we can achieve only 90% in the case of simple maceration process. So that is what to make the preparation into concentrated. So we are not doing anything differently. Just we are dividing the menstruum into either two equal portion or three equal portion, so that we can make the preparation into very much concentrated, and we don't require any specialized apparatus or any other process. So with the concept of the fresh menstruum, which is always having high extraction efficiency, so that is why we are dividing the solvent and we are making into a good contact with the raw material, and this fresh menstruum which is having enough extraction efficiency, so that we can make the preparation into more concentrated one instead of a diluted one. So thank you.